As I did my research, I began to understand there's a very small group of people that influence all the companies that we watch. So they used to call them the Big Six. But Disney just bought Fox, and Disney controls Marvel, and Disney owns Lucas Studios. So look at that giant audience right here. Say a small group of people control the narratives and the content that we all see on all the channels. It makes you feel like, oh, I have lots of choices, but you don't. Who's telling them what to put on those channels? Where does that lead? And for those of you who don't know who Kevin Shipp is, he's a CIA whistleblower. He worked in counterintelligence, and he served in many capacities in his tenure at the CIA.
This is The Big Picture, an official television report to the nation from the United States Army.
It was an OSS memo, the precursor to the CIA, where they were doing a study of the use of motion pictures in America as a means of psychological warfare. So it goes all the way back to pre-1947, when U.S. intelligence was using motion pictures to alter the thinking of Americans in the United States.
The morale of our troops is high. The laughter, music, and general entertainment which comes out of a single small package like this one have helped to build that morale.
The CIA is funneling information into Hollywood. Hollywood is putting it out in the movies, and the population believes it.
Taxes to bury the Axis.
This document right here is a FOIA document. Anybody in America, anybody can request this. It's Freedom of Information Act. And in the 40s, they were telling you they controlled the radio stations. They controlled most of the mainstream media. They're telling you right here that motion pictures are used as psychological warfare. Why would they stop doing it?
There's no question about the fact that Mockingbird is real. It started out paying journalists in major media, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists, to print fake stories that the CIA wanted in the press and fake interviews. And this was revealed in the Church Committee.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal? We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
And of course, then the CIA destroyed the rest of the files, which is what they do. George H.W. Bush came out and finally made the statement about Mockingbird. Well, we're going to officially stop the Mockingbird program. The CIA will no longer pay journalists to write stories. From now on, the program is voluntary, which means Mockingbird continues today. When's the last time you've seen a mainstream media outlet do a serious investigative report on the actions of the CIA? There's a reason for that.
This would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. And we're looking at that very carefully.
Push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 Like, for instance, I saw something on History Channel talking about how the CIA helped Disney buy all the swampland in Florida. Well, why on earth would they do that? Now I go down this rabbit hole of what does the CIA have to do with Hollywood, or at least with Disney? Washington, D.C. is definitely in Hollywood. I have seen documents of the DoD and the CIA writing to the studio heads, guiding them in certain fashion. There's a lot of things that people would talk about that are conspiracy theory, but there's some things that ring true with me. It's like, oh wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Another program developed by the CIA after World War II was called Operation Paperclip. It's been depicted in many movies, including Disney's Marvel series.
It's Operation Paperclip after World War II. SHIELD recruited German scientists with strategic value.
Thought I could help their cause.
Operation Paperclip, and this is something people need to know because it has been so covered up and mocked and berated and claimed to be a conspiracy theory. And by the way, the term labeling people as conspiracy theorists was invented by the CIA to deflect any attention over the JFK assassination. They invented that word as a way to shut down any scrutiny or just critical investigation of what they were doing. So they started that whole ball rolling. In terms of Operation Paperclip, it is documented. There's absolutely no question about it. Alan Dulles, CIA director, was associate of Heinrich Himmler of the Third Reich. So what Dulles proceeded to do when the Third Reich was brought down was he secretly brought all of the top Nazi scientists into the U.S. He falsified their files that he gave to Harry Truman, making them look like there were no war crimes. They brought these Nazi scientists into the CIA to work for the CIA, and that includes the human experiments they conducted on Jewish men, women, and children, and the psychological studies that these Nazi scientists had done. The CIA was using their expertise for these programs through Operation Paperclip, and this was Nazi, much of it occult beliefs that the CIA adopted and actually put these people on their payroll.
One of the programs that came out of Operation Paperclip was MKUltra. Now, MKUltra was a very complex program that dealt with human experiments and mind manipulation.
As this 1952 CIA memo says, the aim is controlling an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will, and even against such fundamental laws of nature as self-preservation.
In the Church Committee, MKUltra came out as an actual program of mind control using mental, physical, and sexual abuse and psychotropic drugs.
Lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD.
It was one of the first times that anybody had run into a powerful drug that was different than anything else that they knew anything about.
A decision was made at the highest levels of the CIA to do testing on unwitting Americans.
At Ravenscraig, Dr. Cameron went further with drugs and electric shock treatments than any researchers in the MKUltra project dared. His aim was to wipe the mind clean. Then he would implant new messages by forcing the patient to listen to a hypnotic repetition as many as 250,000 times. This was called psychic driving.
He would give the patient intensive electric treatment. He would attempt to implant new ideas in the mind of the patient.
Now, to a layman, it would appear that Dr. Cameron was trying to take the slate and wipe it clean, the slate being the mind. In other words, brainwashing.
Exactly, that's a very good comparison.
Brainwashing.
Yes, if you like.
No. Oh, good heavens.
You're doing fine, just try to describe it.
Oh, you don't know, you want to give yourself, so much. How do you feel inside? Inside? I'm living inside.
Nobody explained it to me. Nobody ever asked me if I was willing to do it or anything.
They put me on sleep treatment. And now they kept you asleep for 23 days. And while I was asleep, they were shocking the heck out of me with electric shocks and playing tapes.
Why are you letting responsibility? Why are you
was really like a concentration camp.
Want to talk pure letters? You mind if I look this way?
You look that way. Nothing for you to watch here, but you're going to talk to me as we go along.
They couldn't go any further because CIA Director Richard Helms destroyed all the CIA's MK Ultra documents, and they had to rely on coached witnesses. So they were never able to dig even deeper. What they got was bad enough. It was never terminated. There's no evidence that it was ever terminated. No documents, no nothing, and not even an admission by the CIA that it's been terminated.
How do you feel?
I'm feeling better, thank you.
The CIA is funneling information into Hollywood. Hollywood is putting out in the movies, and the population believes it.
All right, so look, here's the deal. They have been desensitizing us since we were born, and I'll give you some examples. Let's start with the big one. Let's start with words we hear all the time and never even think about. Let's start with the word entertainment. To entertain. What does that mean? To bind or hold. To bind or hold what? An audience's attention. Okay, now let's take the word Hollywood. Where does that come from? Well, Hollywood comes from the holly tree. And the ancient Druids, back in the day, used to take the holly tree, make wands to weave spells, cast spells, or channel spells. And when they needed help, they would consult the magi's or the mediums of the day to help channel their spells to the population. We'll cut to today. What do we have in our houses? We have these black boxes. What are they called? TVs. But if you stop and you say the word television, and when you turn on that television, what do you get? What's the first thing that pops up? A list of channels. And when you turn on those channels, what's on those channels? Programming. They are programming you. They've been programming your whole life. You don't even know it. They do it with your music. They do it with your TV. They do it with your movies. They do it with your games. They have been programming us and programming you since you were little, and you don't even know it because you don't even question it.
Starting in 1900, we entered a previously unimaginable time of modern technology. Advances that allowed the rulers of this world to construct and direct our stories in ways we previously never imagined. As a result, new techniques to control the population were realized. These are the people from the companies that we have trusted to deliver us our news and tell our stories. This has always been about controlling what we as the population think and hear. They help create our culture and influence our society. We as citizens only trust them because as a society, we think that the gatekeepers have our best interest in mind.
As I was researching, I found that most of the early communication companies were developed for shipping or aviation. And a lot of the men that started these companies were commissioned by the military during World War I and World War II. Many of these men worked for the Army and Navy intelligence services along with the OSS, which we know became the CIA. There were many examples of these men becoming the heads or founders of some of the biggest motion picture and media companies before and after their government or military service. I wanted to know how many of the media companies in today's world connected back to Washington. So I started looking. It was like a family tree. The connections between our government personnel and the media corporations was unbelievable. Google, Amazon, Netflix, Twitter, CNN, ABC. So what would happen if all these companies had the same political ideology or agenda? We as this population like to hear people confirm our confirmation biases. We like to hear people tell us that we're right. We don't like to be wrong. And we believe that the people on the media and the people that we're listening to have our best interests in mind. The problem is what if they don't? So if you stop and think about it, they can place any agenda on the population that they choose.